Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We'll be covering United's 3-3 draw with Porto. We'll also discuss the Luis Enrique interaction with Mbappe that's now came to light. This happened, during the Barcelona PSG tie last season, in between leg 1 and leg 2. And it was an interesting thing. So, we'll go more in depth in that. We'll talk about Conte. He has won Coach of the Month in September. And we discuss how great the start has been to the season for Napoli. We'll discuss the Europa League and Conference League games that occurred over today. We do a roundup of those games. And make sure you stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my top headlines going on in the soccer world. If you have a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show successful, and we thrive on your energy and insights. So whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. And if you want to, with this new super chat method, it's a great way for y'all to interact with us. It's a great way for y'all to interact with us. And if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, easy way to do that, use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can also go to the GSMCpodcast.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we did without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We will start off with Maguire getting that late equalizer for Manchester United as they drew to Porto 3-3. As they drew with Porto 3-3. First of all, really interesting game. I do have to say, in the big picture, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of angles to take in this one. First of all, United were the team that went up 2-0. Rashford, he had that run, really, really good run. And then he ended up finishing. Mistake that came, in my opinion, from Diego Costa. He has to do much better there. But it was a good run for Rashford. And Rashford was having an electric first 45 minutes before he was yanked off at halftime. That's something we'll kind of discuss a little bit later on in this segment. But yeah, that was the opening goal. Højlund made it 2-0 Manchester United. And it seemed like, United were going to cruise control. But it's never easy with Manchester United. It's never comfortable. Pepe makes it 2-1 in the 27th minute. And then Samu Omorodion, if you're a Chelsea fan, you probably recognize that name. That was the player that Chelsea were originally kind of signed that really delayed the Conor Gallagher deal, which when that deal couldn't get through to Chelsea, there was some issues and it just didn't go through. Omorodion, he got the goal in the 34th minute. And he also was able to take the lead for Porto in the 50th minute, shortly after halftime, to make it 3-2 United. 3-2 Porto. And, it was one of those games. United go 2-0 up, and then you fast forward to the end of the game. Bruno Fernandes, 2 games in a row, he gets sent off. This is Bruno Fernandes that never been sent off for United, which is so ironic. He gets sent off with a second yellow offense, and you're chasing the game in the last 10 minutes. It was 10 men. But Maguire, he was able to head it home spectacularly in the final stages to maybe give Ten Hag some sort of a lifeline. I do have to say, um, I don't think this is gonna save his job or anything. But you lose this game, wow. Because I don't think it gets any easier. It was Porto coming up. If United lost this game, wow. And again, sometimes Eric Ten Hag is just digging his own grave. Marcus Rashford hasn't had a good start to the season. It was horrible last season. This first 45 minutes, though, he was elite. He looked like the Marcus Rashford of old. And Ten Hag decides to take him out in a game that you're down 3-2 and that you're chasing. You decide to take out your best player in the half at a halftime. You don't even give him a 15 minutes to start off the second half to see if he can do anything. And then after the game, when discussed about it, when they asked him about it, he said, I had to bring Garnacho on. What does that even mean? Like, what? If you had to bring him on, if he's that valuable of a player, number one, why didn't you start him and play him with Marcus Rashford from the get-go? And it makes no sense. And yes, you have Villa coming up away, but you only got 1 point from your opening Europa League game. So this game was actually important for y'all to actually, for you Manchester United to at least get a point in this one. It was very, very important. And you as a manager, you're literally living, game by game at this point. What is the arrogance to look forward? If that's what was going on, I don't know. But, he's on a game-to-game basis, Eric Ten Hag is. And the way that he just completely neglected the game going on right now is it's insane. It really is. I'm beyond surprised by it. I'm beyond surprised at the tone and sort of arrogance in his post-game presser. And it's a manager that's digging his own grave. And I don't get it at all. Speaking of the performance again, I don't know if this is a point lost or a point gained for United, because number one, going up 2-0 as early as they did and not being able to, take care of that, it's really, really bad. I do have to say that's not good enough, and that's not at Manchester United's level. But at the same time, you're down 3-2. It's you're down 3-2. You're chasing the game in the last 10 minutes, down to 10 men, and you get that equalizer finally at the end. Harry Maguire on a set piece rescues. In that aspect, you'd be very happy about that. But at the same time, it's difficult to say whether this is a point gained, point lost. It's really, really hard. It's because of the circumstances and the total situation that United find themselves in right now was Ten Hag. It's hard to, see. But again, this is not a result that's going to save Ten Hag. And from what we've seen United so far this season and what we've seen so far last season, how can we expect anything away than getting thumped when they go away to Villa? How do you expect anything other than that? How do we expect them to go to Villa, and Rashford getting rest for that game? I mean, how can we expect anything less than being... And then if they get properly done by Aston Villa, how is Ten Hag going to retain his job entering that international break? I think that international break is gonna... there's a very good chance if this game goes really, really wrong, this Villa game, he's done. He's done. And I don't think, winning this game against Porto was going to make that, difference, to be honest. But, okay, but go back. Onana, he's just not good enough. Now, look, he made a really, really good save, preventing the Mazraoui own goal. But he needs to be seriously questioned. some mistakes that he makes is just so basic. For someone who's brought in, you're bringing into Manchester United, you're supposed to look world class. Just not good enough. I thought in general the back line was weak across the board. Dalot, Alessandro, De Ligt. I thought Mazraoui wasn't horrible. But the rest of them, I thought they were pretty poor. And they didn't look like... in general, the back five, including the goalkeeper, they didn't look with cohesion. They didn't defend with the focus levels that's expected of a team like United. They weren't disciplined enough. They gave up a lot of clear-cut opportunities. They looked easily playable against. And it was, and that's an issue. I thought Rashford, he was great. I do have to say in that first half, one of his best 45 minutes I've seen him play. So that's a positive. Something that would be negative as well. Bruno Fernandes, he's continuing to look really, really bad. He's looked horrible throughout the duration of the season. He gets sent off again. His previous red card got overturned after the the Premier League, they appealed it, which you never see. But then he gets a red card, and in a second game in a row. I'm sorry, for a captain, that's just unacceptable. And I guess you want to have a little level of sympathy in the fact that this is an anomaly when you look at his career. He's not someone that he continuously gets red cards. I think this is his first two ever. I know the last red card he had was his first red card in the Premier League. It might be his first red card period at Manchester United. I think it was, but it's not good enough. When the performance levels drop, then overall the you better be squeaky clean in terms of your discipline. And again, it's time for him to start getting criticized as well. And it's for Erik ten Hag to have that lead 2-0 and to oversee this team fall apart, collapse the way that they did, and some of the in-game decisions, not just in this game, but throughout the duration of the season, he's almost digging his own grave. It's so really crazy to watch. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss Luis Enrique's interaction with Mbappe.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we discussed Maguire's late equalizer as United drew 3-3 with Porto. We move on to discuss Luis Enrique and his interaction with Mbappe. this was obviously part of this new, these all or nothing sort of footages emerging, and this happened to be in between. It was after the first leg of Barcelona PSG, in which Luis Enrique and Mbappe was a one-on-one moment of, Luis Enrique giving him a sort of a pep talk to to raise his level of defensive intensity, to essentially try, we know Mbappe, he's almost a passenger in which he's perceived as, or last year he was the best player at PSG. He was their main attacker. So he was a passenger in terms of didn't really do any pressing duties, didn't do any defensive duties. You see, I saw a clip this morning where Real Madrid and Lille were playing, and this is Lille were down, or this was within the last 15 minutes or so, Lille up 1-0. Bellingham, he had the ball, and he had the ball in a compromised position, and the Lille players eventually won it off him. But Mbappe and Vini are all the way on the left side of the pitch, far across the field, just standing there, and it just, obviously Vinicius, that's another conversation to have, but it epitomizes what Luis Enrique is talking about here. And yeah, it was a talk that he had. I'm gonna try to find that. It was in Spanish. I'm gonna try to find the transition of everything he said. He made some Michael Jordan references, talking about how Michael Jordan defended like a son of a you-know-what. And look, it was okay, here you go. This is what it was. I found it. So he said, Luis Enrique said, "I read that you like Michael Jordan. Well, Michael Jordan will grab all of his teammates and defend with intensity. You're going to have to set that example as a person and as a player by pressing. You will be the one marking Kubarsi, both him and Ter Stegen. You are going to spend the entire game pressing Kubarsi so he doesn't advance, and Ter Stegen so he plays quickly. Why? To be a leader, you think you only need to score goals. You're a phenomenon, a top-world player, but for me, that's not enough. A true leader helps defensively when they aren't scoring goals. Takes the initiative and says, guys, defensive line, stay there. I'll take care of my teammates, and you set an example by pressing. Do you know what we'll have? A real team machine." Yeah, and look, the first thing I do say is, it's very obvious. It's very, very obvious that this is not something that Mbappe has recently developed this habit of not doing any of the defensive work. This has been going on for years. So that's, let's get that out of the way first of all. Why did it take Luis? And I don't know, maybe he's had previous conversations with Mbappe, and Mbappe has just tuned him out, ignored him. But why is it all the way in February, March, when this game is played, when the second leg is coming up, in which he's finally having this talk with Mbappe? You need to do the defensive duties. You need to do This is a problem with Mbappe that's I know has been occurring throughout the duration of the season. So that's the thing, why didn't Luis Enrique try to get to him earlier? Maybe he did, and we just haven't seen it yet in the documentary, and this is something Mbappe is just not willing to accept. But look, Mbappe, he has an ego. He has an ego, and I've been saying it for a while. It's my reason why I don't think Mbappe will ever reach the level of, a mess, the Messis, Ronaldos, all those, or even the Neymars. I don't think he'll reach that level because look, Ronaldo also had an ego. I'm sure Messi in his own sort of way has an ego. I'm sure Neymar has an ego. I'm sure De Bruyne, all these players, they have egos and all that. But with Mbappe, number one, I never seen a player. Okay, let me reframe that because Vinicius also doesn't do the defensive duties. But there's something about him that's always rubbed me the wrong way, and it's rubbed the wrong way of a lot of people, and we know there's everything is out there. Everything's out there, and I don't want this to be a personal attack, so I'm not even gonna go there. But everything is out there. And then the thing about the teammates that he's having, that he's essentially a passenger. He's a passenger. Think about all his teammates having to do the extra work because him not being able to do it. We go back to the 2022 World Cup. You know how much work Adrien Rabiot had to do to cover for Mbappe? To cover for Mbappe not being willing to do the defensive work. You go to the 2022 World Cup final. Didier Deschamps had to take out Giroud within 40 minutes and bring on, I believe it was Thuram or Coman or something of that sort, so that Mbappe will play through the middle, because Mbappe was not, following his defensive, he was not following, his runner playing on the left-hand side. He was not doing any of the defensive work. So you play him in the middle, you can almost, playing through the middle, he could basically be that passenger that he is. And obviously that wasn't the only reason why Didier Deschamps decided to switch it up in that World Cup final. They were down 2-0 within 40 minutes. And whenever you're in a situation like that, you need to make some changes, and you need to make some changes fast. And you need to adjust quickly. But at the same time, though, at the same time, I think it was Colomwani actually that came on. No, it wasn't Colomwani. No, it wasn't. But at the same time, this is just something that that Mbappe, he's not willing to adapt. He has a selfish nature to him. He doesn't think about his teammates in this situation. If I'm one of his teammates too, I'd start getting extremely frustrated. I really would. I'd start getting extremely frustrated. I saw a clip of Bellingham a little bit frustrated, not at Mbappe alone, but Mbappe and Vinicius both kind of not being involved, being all the way on that left-hand side. But it's something that, again, the better the player is, the more ego there is, and the more he's allowed to get away with. And that's the thing, Didier Deschamps, maybe he doesn't like the fact that Mbappe doesn't do the defensive work, but at the same time, he's not going to drop him. Even Luis Enrique, I happen to believe, is one of the more stern managers we saw in how he benched Dembele. No, he didn't bench Dembele. He dropped him from the squad because of disciplinary reasons. Look, I thought if there was any manager that was going to, correct Mbappe's ways, it'd be a manager like Luis Enrique, someone who's stern, someone who's stubborn in his approach, and is serious and detail-oriented. But even Luis Enrique couldn't, figure it out. And I don't know. I think this is something that's going to prevent Mbappe from taking that next step. If he wants to be there up with the greats, it's something. I don't think this is something, something that because the not defending and all that's a small symptom of the bigger picture. That's a small symptom of the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is Mbappe's ego. It's Mbappe's just personal flaws, and the fact that he's selfish, not thinking about his teammates. He has an ego. I do all this. Y'all should carry me, blah, blah, blah. He has that sort of mindset and mentality. And look, that's gonna stop him from being one of the best. Talent-wise, he has the ability. He has the ability. He's a good goal scorer. Again, he's a very, very good goal scorer. He has pace. He's not my cup of tea because he's not the most technically gifted players, and those are the players that, and he is a very technically gifted player. But when I say he's not the most technically gifted player, He's not on the level of an Eden Hazard, a Messi, a Neymar, but he does have ability. And he has that combination of athleticism and technique that makes him the player he is. But with everything, all the other things, I don't know. It's going to be hard for me. I don't think he will be an all-time great. I really will. I think that's going to hold him back. And I believe he's going to start holding back Real Madrid as well. And that's something we might be seeing so far to start off the season. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss Conte and Napoli.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed Luis Enrique's interaction that came to light recently with Mbappe. We move on to react. Conte has won Manager of the Month for November with Napoli's really good start to the season. Up to this point, they find themselves right now first in Serie A, and they've done really, really well. They have, in 6 games, they have 4 wins, a draw, 1 loss, 13 points. Napoli has. And it was interesting. It's interesting the start that they had because, well, really, the first game of the season was horrible. They had they were defeated by, I believe it was Verona. They were defeated by Verona 3-0, comfortably defeated 3-0 by Verona. And then they became, since then, they've strung a series of, since then they've strung a series of results with a 3-0 win over Bologna. Bologna team playing Champions League football. They finished in the top 4 last year. They defeated Parma, got a little bit lucky in that one. Defeated Cagliari, I always say that, I can't say that. And then they got that point with Juventus. That was a very, very good game, very fun game. They beat Palermo 5-0 in the Coppa Italia dominant fashion, and then they defeated Monza. And they technically they play tomorrow against Como. I'm looking forward to that one. We know Como, and they've been the sort of interesting story in Serie A now, being managed by Cesc Fabregas. There have been an interesting story, but yeah, Cesc Fabregas managing against one of his former managers in Conte. If you remember, Conte managed Fabregas at Chelsea. In fact, Conte wasn't the biggest fan of Fabregas, but that's another conversation for another day. But Napoli, great start to the season up to this point. And I can't say I'm too surprised. Antonio Conte, we know he's a brilliant manager. And he's shown that he can come into a club and he can turn them around fast. You remember what he did to that Chelsea team? I believe that Chelsea team finished 11th that season, the year before, 11th or 12th. Make one signing in Conte, and they go on that next year and they win the whole Premier League. That's just what Conte does. And this is a Napoli team that, yes, had a horrible season last year, but there's still quality in this team. A lot of this team were players that, won the Serie A, that is, 2 years ago, and that did in dominant fashion. You have, Anguissa, Di Lorenzo, Kvaratskhelia, Politano, Simeone. These are all players that were involved in the team. Raspadori, these are all players that were involved in the team, and they've also added some quality into this team, coming in with the likes of Spinazzola coming in. We know what he did at the European Championship in 2016 or 2021. Hasn't quite reached back to those levels, but was a decent player for Mourinho at Roma. Billy Gilmour, we know the quality of him, and he's starting to ease in more into this team. Scott McTominay, we know what he can provide for the team. David Neres, who I thought would make that big impact earlier on. I thought he was going to get that really big move after his Ajax days. Instead, he made a sort of sideways move to Shakhtar and Benfica, but now he's playing for Napoli. I think he's a good player as well. He was part of that Ajax team that reached the semi-final. Really should have reached the final. And then the big one, Romelu Lukaku, who's played some of his best football under Antonio Conte. So I think the quality is there with this team. They have some key players that were involved in that 2022 or 2023 Serie A winning team. And then you also have the, some new players coming in, and the biggest of all, you have that manager. Last season, the biggest issue was, they lost Luciano Spalletti, decided to take a break from football. He went on to actually become an Italy manager a little bit later on. But you had that manager carousel there. You didn't have the man in there, the man in the dugout that was capable of leading such team. Now you do it, Antonio Conte, and this start so far, it reminds me a little bit of what we saw from Chelsea in that, yes, they won the Premier League that year, but they had earlier in the season, they had that rough loss to Arsenal. Really, really rough loss. I believe they lost 3-0 to Arsenal, and that game was at home as well. And Conte, he was able to recover from that, and, they won the Premier League that year, and they did it in supreme fashion. I have to say, I believe they finished that year with 93 points. They won 30 games that campaign. And they did lose to that Arsenal team early on, but they were able to recover from that and become the team that they became. And I see similar parallels in that with this loss that they suffered at Venezia as well. We know Conte, they're not going to play the most pretty of football, game in, game out. They're not going to play the most pretty of football. They're going to play a very efficient game in an efficient manner. They're not going to dominate the game in terms of possession, but they'll create a lot of opportunities. I like the, him. He's generally been associated with the back five, but he's going with the back four with Napoli so far to start off the season. I'd like to see how long he sticks with the back four. Oliveira, Buongiorno, Rahmani, Di Lorenzo. I think overall solid back four. When does Billy Gilmour start getting more introduced? Billy Gilmour is a player with some technical quality in midfield that gives you a little bit difference than playing, Stanislav Lobotka and Stanislav Lobelka and Anguissa, those two, Billy Gilmore gives you a little bit of a different element than them as a player in the midfield. He's very, very gifted. He can be a very good connector. He can play in those tight spaces in midfield to get you out of positions and get players and spread balls into players and allow them to take advantage of space. He has that ability in midfield. He can. He will receive the ball and he'll play with confidence. He'll be able to control it in tight midfield congested spaces. I've seen him do, really quick half turns to, find space where he can release a ball and play in someone on a counterattack situation. He's a really good midfielder to play in there. He's had some big performance also at the elite level. So he's not, going, to the European Championship. Multiple European Championship. He's not a player that's afraid of the moments. Even as a young boy playing in Euro 2021, he played at Wembley and he played a really, really good game. He was the best player in that midfield playing against England, the England national team. The quality of players that they have. So I'd like to see him get more settled. But overall, I've been really impressed, and I expected Napoli to make a big improvement because of Conte coming in. I do. I expected this, and I think it's only going to continue. I definitely think this is a team. Don't know if they will be battling for the title. I think they'll be up there, but with the likes of Inter Milan, that is a little bit of a difficult battle there. But I do think they'll be in and around it at the end for sure. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will do a whole Europa League and Conference League roundup.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we reacted to Conte winning Coach of the Month in Serie A. We move on to do a Europa League and Conference League roundup of all the games that we haven't discussed. So every game besides that. United draw against, I believe it was... No, it was against Porto, not I believe it was. Let's pull up. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties there. A lot of Europa League and Conference League games being played within a day because of the congested nature with more teams being added and all that. But Tottenham, they get a 2-1 win over Ferencváros. They made a lot of changes. Tottenham did. Papa Sarr, he got on the score sheet. Brennan Johnson, he continues to be in good form. He was able to get a goal as well. They did this going away to Budapest. It's I think Bernabé's Varga for Ferencváros, he got a really good volley to make it a little bit of a scary finish for Tottenham. But eventually they held on and they got the win, and good start to them to their Europa League campaign. 6 points, especially because they were able to, in both games they were able to, not have to play the most, strong 11 that they have. Allowed them to save some players because this is, you got to look at it at a bigger picture if you're Tottenham, and Ange Postecoglou, unlike Erik ten Hag, he's not on the cutting board right now. but yeah, and they play Brighton on Sunday with some players being able to, have a full week to prepare for that. The Latvian side RFS drew with Galatasaray 2-2, and the Latvian team RFS earned their first point, and they did that going down 2-0 to Galatasaray. They were down 2-0, but they came back. Dries Mertens and Yunus Akgün put the Turkish team 2-0 ahead just in under 40 minutes. But RFS was able to pull one right before the break to make it to give them a little bit of hope entering the second half, and they were eventually able to draw level shortly after halftime. And it was a good result for them. Slavia Praha and Ajax draw 1-1. Midtjylland defeat Tel Aviv 2-0. Anderlecht beat Real Sociedad 2-1. Olympiacos defeated Braga 3-0. Hoffenheim defeated Dynamo Kiev 2-0. Malmo got a 2-1 win over Karabakh. Lazio got a 4-1 win over Nice. I do have to say, so this game, Lazio, they dominated this game playing as Olympico. But around the 70-point mark, that game should never have continued. That game should have been at least delayed enough to get the water off the pitch, and whether it took another 30 minutes to get to scrape off as much water on the pitch and then get players out there just to kick the ball around for the last 15 minutes, because it was 4-1 at that point. So the result was basically decided. There was no way that the players should have been allowed to keep playing. It's not football at that point. The ball is not even rolling. They're making passes and the ball stops on its own. The ball is not rolling. The ball stops. That's not football. Well, that last 15 minutes, it was not football. There was no movement. There was no rhythm. It didn't look like a football game. And it's funny to watch, yes. And you can appreciate the funniness of, I don't know, funniness is not the word, but the funny part of it with the fact that it was 4-1 and the result was already decided. But imagine if that was 1-1 coming down to, there was no way. I hope there was no way that, the referees and UEFA officials was allowing that game to continue being played on those conditions, because that's not football at the end of the day, and that's not how games should be decided. Slavia Praha and Ajax 1-1. Elfsberg defeated Roma 1-0. Surprising result to Roma team, having a little bit of a good new manager bounce since sacking De Rossi. Now losing to Elfsberg, battle up there. Athletic Club 2-0 win over Alkmaar. It was funny. Nico Williams, he was able to combine with Inaki Williams to take the lead. The brotherly connection to take the initial 1-0 lead for Athletic Club. Eventually, Sanket was able to seal the deal for Athletic Club to make it 2-0. Victor Piazon in Ludogorets finished 0-0. 0-0. Lyon got a 4-1 win over Rangers. These French clubs so far in Europe have been doing really, really well with Brest, Lyon. I believe there was another French team that was up in the Champions League stadium. I know Brest was up there. What was the other French team? Lille, they got that result, defeating Real Madrid. And then now Lyon, they got a 4-1 win over Rangers. Twente, Fenerbahce finished 1-1. Twente got a second back-to-back 1-1 draw. If you remember, going back to the opening Europa League match day, they got a draw against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Eintracht Frankfurt defeated Besiktas 3-1. I do not know what this club is. FCSB FC Steaua Bucuresti based in Bucharest, Romania. They got a 1-0 win over PAOK KFC. The Greek club, they got a 1-0 win over them. And Union Saint-Gilloise, the Belgian club, drew with Bodo Glimt 0-0. Bodo Glimt actually had that opening day victory over Porto, 3-2 win. But yeah, going back to it though, the standings for the Europa League. Currently, Lazio, Lyon, Tottenham, FCSB, and Anderlecht all find themselves all tied top of the group. They all have 6 points. Goal differential has Lazio number 1 right now. But it's all tight there. As far as the teams with 4 points, you got Ajax, Eintracht Frankfurt, Galatasaray, Midtjylland, Slavia Praha, Athletic Club, Hoffenheim, Fenerbahce, Bodo Glimt, Olympia, and Bodo Glimt. Then as far as teams with only 3 points, you have Olympiacos, Elfsborg, Rangers, AZ Alkmaar, Malmo, Braga, and then teams with 2 points only, United, which is wow. United find themselves right now 21st after 2 games, 21st in Europa League standings. Victoria Pilsen, Twente, and then teams that only have 1 point, Porto, Real Sociedad. These are teams, Roma, really that need to be up there. They so far have had some really disappointing starts to start off their Europa League campaign. You also have Union Saint-Gilloise, Ludogorets, RFS, Nice, Ferencváros, Tel Aviv, PAOK, Karabakh, Dynamo Kiev, and Besiktas. Let's move on though to the Conference League. Today was actually so I'm gonna wrap up everything that happened in the Conference League. Yesterday or Wednesday, we had half of the Conference League games, because this is actually match day 1, because the first week was reserved for Champions League, second week was reserved for Europa League. The week that is reserved for conferences is later on down the line in December. So Victoria 3-1 win over Celje. Rapid Wien got a 2-1 win over Başakşehir. Astana got a 1-0 win over Topola. Heidenheim got a 2-1 win over Olimpija. Cercle Bruges got a 6-2 win over St. Gallen. Omonoia got a 4-0 win over Rajfajik. Noah got a 2-0 win over Mladal Boleslav. Molde got a 3-0 win over Larne. Hearts got a 2-1 win over Dynamo Minsk. Legia Warsaw got a 1-0 win over Real Betis. Shamrock Rovers and APOL finished 1-1. Lugano got a 3-0 win over HGK. Paphos got a 4-1 win over Petrokap. Dujgarden got a 2-2 draw with Lask. Panathinaikos got a 1-1 draw with Borak. Chelsea got a 4-2 win over Ghent. Bialystok got a 2-1 win over Copenhagen, and Fiorentina got a 2-0 win over the Saints. Chelsea, obviously, they got that 4-2 win over Ghent. It was a second team for Chelsea. You had Jorgensen in goal. You had Disasi Adarbio, Badiashile Vega in the back line. Sazata and Dewsbury Hall in midfield. Neto, Felix, Mudryk, and Kunku in the front four. You see that attacking front four. That is Chelsea's right now second unit of attack. Just shows the quality of this team. A lot of there's quality and depth now with Chelsea. They got a 4-2 win over Ghent. As far as the standings, it's only been one game, so there's no point in reading them out. But it's obviously the Conference League is not the level that Chelsea want to find themselves in, but it's still a trophy at the end of the day, and they're kind of want to cruise their way through it. They don't want to give it too much attention because look, apart from Fiorentina and Real Betis, there really is no competition in here. So It's not something that that Chelsea need to play their first team game in, game out for the entire campaign. In fact, Cole Palmer was left out of the squad. I believe the squad for the group stages. There's a reason for that. Short break here coming up, guys. When we come back, we will do our reactions for some of the top soccer headlines. Before the break, we discussed Europa League and Conference League roundup. We move on to react to some of the top soccer headlines. And interesting news coming out of FIFA adjusting transfer rules for the 25 Club World Cup being played in the US. FIFA has agreed on some interim transfer policies allowing players to be able to change their teams and be able to go to the Club World Cup and represent the new teams that they signed for in this, expanded Club World Cup that's set to start in next June. The move essentially opens the door for players that have contracts expiring on, usually it's June 30th. It allows those players to sign early as free agents for any of the 32 teams that have qualified for this new expanded version of the Club World Cup. We know some of the potential free agents out there: Mo Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Virgil van Dijk. There's also Son Heung-min. There's a lot of brilliant players that are up under contract. Joshua Kimmich also as well. It seems like Bayern will get that done, but there's players that will be available. De Bruyne, Alphonso Davies, and if they want to make that move to a new team, they will have that opportunity to make it even earlier so that they can represent their new team at the Club World Cup. So I think that makes it tricky because it gives an advantage for the teams playing in the Club World Cup to have their players even early, and I don't know how that they'll make sure to level the advantage of that with the other teams that are not playing the Club World Cup and all that, but I don't, that's something that, for FIFA it's for them to discuss. Germany, Manuel Neuer retired, but there's also the injury of Ter Stegen, who we know is going to be out for a very long time. So Germany, they have selected 3 goalkeepers that are all uncapped for the upcoming Nation League games against Bosnia and the Netherlands. Excuse me. Oliver Bäumen, Janis Belazovic, and Stuttgart Alexander Nubel, all on Thursday, will be in the squad. These are all players that are all uncapped. It'll be interesting to see who will be stepping up in goal for Julian Nagelsmann. Obviously, this is not an epidemic because the World Cup doesn't start tomorrow, and Ter Stegen, he'll be back and available, way before that World Cup. But it's gonna be something to discover. I'm sorry, I was in the middle of that. I had a little bit pause because I was reading this headline and I couldn't believe what I saw. So apparently Luis Suarez, Luis Suarez, he recently retired from Uruguay, and he was involved in that last team in the Copa America, and he had that one game in World Cup qualifier, that send-off game for Uruguay. He blasted Marcelo Bielsa, and he said there was problematic working conditions imposed by Marcelo Bielsa during that Copa America, and he urged fans to not blame the players if something goes wrong going forward. Luis Suarez said, at the Celeste complex, employees are not allowed to come in and greet us and eat with us. They have to be careful even at the door they have to enter. It breaks my heart that this is how life is in the complex today. Matias Vecino was the first to see it coming. Nobody questions the fact that a guy like Vecino, who was 30 years old, left from one day to the next. There were situations, he continued on, Luis Suarez, there were situations at the Copa America that hurt me, but I didn't say them for the sake of coexistence. Many players held a meeting to ask the coach to at least say good morning to us, but he didn't even say hello. Bielsa gives a conference and talks wonderful things about people, and in New York there was a day when he asked us not to stop to greet people, and I stood up and told him that we were going to greet people anyway. Wow. Okay, well, it keeps going actually. Before he retired, before he hung up his jersey, Suarez did say he spoke with Bielsa, trying to improve the current, manner. He said, I had a 5-minute chat with Bielsa, speaking as a group leader, and at the end, he only replied, thank you very much. Tomorrow, I asked people not to take it out on the players if something goes wrong. Bielsa has separated the whole group, even in the way they train. Wow. That is a bomb. That is a bomb, and I guess Luis Suarez trying to maintain the peace and all that, doesn't want to be too problematic. He didn't want to say anything in there. And, he said, he spoke to Marcelo Bielsa afterwards, from what he's saying, and he's trying to improve the situation. And, it didn't seem like Bielsa was willing to, actually, we don't know the tone in which he said the thank you very much. But going back though, wow, if that's the case, he didn't even say hello. He wouldn't even say good morning. That reminds me of, go back to Nuggets days, way back, with George Karl, Kenyon Martin, when he was speaking about George Karl, he said George Karl wouldn't even say hello, and it showed the arrogance of him. He didn't even say hello. I don't know. Obviously, this is Luis Suarez's perspective. This is something, it's only from Luis Suarez. Maybe we want to see other I'm not questioning the integrity of Luis Suarez. I think what he's done for Uruguay, he deserved the respect of his opinion, and he should be believed. But at the same time, I would like to hear from maybe other players, obviously players that are not involved with Uruguay. They're not going to say it now, but is it the case? Because this is not something I've really heard, during his time at Leeds with Marcelo Bielsa. We know Bielsa, the el loco style of play. He has that sort of philosophy, and they've done well since he's came in, and he is a top manager. But wow, if it's true, the divide is creating, the not having the personal relationship with the players that we expect of a manager to have. I have to be honest, I'm stunned by this, and I'm just hearing about this as I was reading it right now. So this is something I need to go look into more and hear more about. So that's just astonishing. But thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. So thank you once again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of